Hey guys, it's Cayley. I'm back with another What Sold from Last Week video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over sales that happened last week on eBay, Poshmark, and Depop. Those are the three main platforms that I sell on, and I love sharing my sales with everybody here on YouTube. That way, you guys can also keep your eye out for similar things at your local thrift stores. If you like staying in the know about what buyers are purchasing right now and what's selling quickly, then consider subscribing down below because I make these What Sold videos every single week. All right, let's dive right in. Okay, so starting off with some of my fastest sales, a quick breakdown of this one. This is the brand Tote & Co. I do love finding this brand, not everything in it sells, but as a whole, it is a pretty decent brand to look for. So I'm pretty much comping everything that I come across, both men's and women's. This is a women's pair of linen pants, and you guys already know, but every single time spring, summer rolls around, I flip a ton of linen items, and I know that you guys do too. So let me know down below in the comments, are you seeing a huge uptick in linen in your store? Because I certainly am. I could pull all of them to show you, but that would take up probably the whole video. So we'll just start with a couple for today's video. So this is Tote & Co. Again, not really a 100% sell-through rate brand, but when factor stacked, and this is true for pretty much anything, with a great material such as linen, it can definitely move quickly. This sold the exact same day that I got it listed. They were called the Lena linen pants, and I used keywords to elevate the listing such as granola. Also in my description, we have minimalist, lightweight, breathable, beach, hike, and outdoors. I think I originally listed this one closer to 30 and received an offer for $25, which I accepted, making my order earnings on Poshmark $20. All right, next up was another Poshmark sale. Poshmark was actually, it was popping off a little bit. I've been hating on Poshmark a little bit lately because they've really frustrated me with false suspensions due to delisting items that have sold on other platforms. But I've got to say, now that I'm in the clear for that and I'm able to consistently list again, my sales have been pretty good over there. This one is a style-based item. And the main reason we picked this one up is because of the patchwork. So mixed media, mixed prints, and overall patchworky looking items, whether it's a top, a skirt, a dress, a jacket, whatever it is, in women's right now is very, very trendy. So I pay particular attention to really anything that looks patchwork, and I would recommend that you did too. This is just the brand White Stag, not a great brand. It is a size large. It is a maxi skirt. I use keywords such as patchwork, prairie, boho, and cottage core. I also use the keyword broomstick because this word is used to describe skirts that are very full and can fan out. So I put that in my description as well, just to, again, elevate that listing. I had this listed for $35, and in just 3 days, I received an offer for $27, which I went ahead and accepted, making my order earnings $21.60. All right, next up is something I show in, I feel like every What's Sold video every single week because I literally sell them every week. This is a Ralph Lauren V-neck cable knit sweater, women's. This is Ralph Lauren Sport. This one's a size large, and yeah, I pick these up any color, any size, and I use keywords such as old money, fisherman, tennis. I also put in my description Ivy League and preppy. And so depending on what the color is, you can use more or less of those keywords, but generally speaking, those are the keywords that I use with it. And I typically sell them for $30 to $40 on average. So this one sold right in the middle at $35. And this one sold in just 3 days of being listed. And this one I ended up selling again for $35. Sorry, actually 4 days of being listed. Ended up selling for $35, making my order earnings $28. Next up is a completely style-based piece. This one was actually completely unbranded, just a modern kind of I'm sure it was probably some kind of a fast fashion brand. And this one we full titled as Women's Black Sheer Sleeve Flared Lacy Whimsy Goth Witchy Dress Size Large Vampire. And I'm sure we use more keywords in the description as well. But on Depop and really any platform, you want to get your best keywords towards the top of your description and in your title. And so I really think that's what got this item to sell quickly. This unbranded dress sold in just 6 days. Again, I listed at 30. I received an offer for 20, which I went ahead and accepted just because, again, this is just like a no-name, not a very high quality piece. So $20 for that, getting it from the bins and just continuously flipping stuff like this just helps to pad my sales. So accepted 20, and Depop fees are really low. So I ended up making $16.17 off of this piece. And you might notice I've talked about this before on my what sold videos, but I'm trying really hard to make sure that if there is a very like good factor that I want to highlight in a piece, especially something like this where it's completely unbranded and it needs a lot of help to sell. Just making sure to get that very visible in my cover photo. And so we're pulling sleeves out like this when there is like an exaggerating sleeve. And I do think that it is helping. I learned that tip from Bethany over at Trash Pandas Thrift. So go check out her channel. But yeah, this sold again really quickly in just 6 days. Next up, this is something else that commonly gets overlooked and left behind because if you actually comp these on eBay, the sell-through rate is really, really low. But I find that there is a price point and certain keywords that I can use to get these men's Levi's denim jackets to move, regardless of color, size, etc. So this one I actually got in donation, so it was free for us. This is just a Levi's men's black denim jacket, size large. Even with all of those factors, again, terrible sell-through rate. But I use keywords such as trucker, grunge, military, and biker. This one sold in just 7 days on an offer for 30, and my earnings on this one were $24, which is pure profit because, again, my cost of goods was zero. And I typically sell these between $30, $40 usually. All right, this was an awesome flip, and this might look familiar to you just because I showed it in a thrift haul. This is the brand Figs, which you guys should know as a scrubs brand. Figs as a whole, I would say you got to be really picky with now. It is pretty oversaturated for a lot of their scrub styles. I really have to drill down to like the exact style, size, and gender that I have, sometimes even color. But whenever I see anything outside of the scrubs, such as like a base layer piece or a jacket like this, I'm always looking up because they usually have really great sell-through rates. So this is a kind of Teddy Sherpa style fleece jacket, and it had a really excellent sell-through rate. It was called the On Shift Sherpa fleece jacket. This one was a women's. I know I wasn't sure during that thrift haul. This one I only had listed for 8 days. It sold for my full asking price on Poshmark for $75, which is just insane. And I made $60 on this listing. Sorry, I just made coffee, so I'm trying to make sure to drink it while it's still hot. I did use keywords on this such as medical, athleisure, and then in the description, nurse, RN, hospital, scrubs, layer, etc., just to make sure to get that to the right buyer. Okay, next one is a completely unbranded item again that sold on my fastest list. This one sold in just 9 days on Depop. This is a green unbranded suede leather vest. This one was very fairy grunge. I could also see it being layered in a Renaissance piece, so I went ahead and used those keywords as well. You can see from my boosting stats that this did get a lot of love in just the 9 days that it was listed. So that was fantastic. I listed this for 30 on Depop, sent out automatic offers using Nifty, and this sold for $27. My order earnings were $25.46 on this piece. Okay, next fastest sale. This one sold on Poshmark. I think I also showed this in a recent thrift haul. This is a newer label to me called Festy. It's actually made by Torrid. This one was actually new with tags. And I do not pick up hardly any Torrid anymore. It is a brand that is very hard to move for me. There are certain pieces, if they fit a certain aesthetic, that I will pick up in Torrid, but it's getting harder and harder to move. Boho like this is actually not one of the aesthetics that I tend to pick up in Torrid. But this piece looked really good just because you guys know all those open knits, crochets, especially in the lighter colors, were very trendy right now. They're still trendy, but Coachella just happened. There's lots of like festivals happening and concerts, and people use these as layering pieces. And so picked it up regardless of my history with Torrid. This sold in just 14 days after being listed for an offer of $22, and that made my order earnings on Poshmark $17.60. All right, this was another fast sale, and this is definitely a bolo brand that you want to know. It is not one you're going to come across often, but you definitely want to know what it is when you do come across it, because as you can see, their stuff is very plain. And in my opinion, I know there's some controversy on this, but every time I found this brand, which is Joa Brown, it doesn't feel super high quality. It retails for a ton, but if it honestly feels cheap to me personally. But they do have some really cute pieces. But if you don't know that label, this could be one where indicators of quality is not going to help you. So just make sure you have that brand memorized. This one is an oversized slouchy top. I found this one at a regular thrift store on a new rack actually. And this one just took 14 days to list. Most of their pieces do have a pretty good following. And I think I listed this originally for like $65 on Poshmark expecting offers. And I received an offer for $53, which I went ahead and accepted. That made my order earnings $42.40 on this piece. And I was lucky enough to find this one new with tags. All right, next up and last one for this category before we move on to some of my higher dollar sales. This is one of my favorite brands to find right now. It's pretty easy to find too. There is a lot flooding in thrift stores, and I know a lot of you have mentioned that you're like slightly nervous that because of that, this brand is going to become oversaturated soon, and that is traditionally what happens when you start seeing like a flood of a certain brand being liquidated into thrift stores. However, this has been going on for months, and I have not seen this brand sell-through rate slow down, so just keep an eye on your comps, but I feel pretty good about this brand still. It is Quince, and yeah, they're known for being like a more affordable way to get luxury products, so they tend to use some pretty good materials such as linens, 100% cottons. They also make bedding, jewelry. I think they even make shoes now, so definitely one you want to keep your eye out for. This is a pair of wide leg linen pants. Here's linen again. And they don't typically comp super high either. They're just really good bread and butter. This one I listed for $30. And these pants only took 14 days to sell. They sold for my full asking price of around 30, making my order earnings $22.77. All right, next up, I'm going to move on to some of my higher dollar sales that I haven't mentioned already. This was one of my favorite sales last week, and I am praying that it doesn't come back for a return. You just, whenever you have a high dollar sale, you're always like, oh man, are they going to say that it didn't fit or something? So you just hope it never comes back. But I've been holding on to this one. I actually got this in consignment. I had it listed for 108 days. And I'm so glad that the person who consigned this with me like looked into this, because I didn't know that this was an ASO. And so I did a little bit of digging and was able to find an ASO of Paris Hilton wearing this. And so I side by side that in my cover to really elevate the value of this piece. Diane von Furstenberg, not really a brand people are seeking after anymore. It's very oversaturated. And so you've got to really have a key piece or a great material in order to get that to move. Their wrap dresses are one of their most iconic things that they're known for. So it makes sense that there'd be an elevated sell-through rate for this piece. It also had a rare tiger print on it. And as a side note, anytime we see rare like animal prints or geometric designs, just rare prints in general, it's always something that we are looking into. All right, so my title for this one was Diane von Furstenberg Rare Tiger Wrap Dress, size extra small, black, ASO, which stands for As Seen on Paris Hilton. I listed this originally for $175 or best offer, expecting to get, pretty reasonable offers. And I received an offer for $145, which I accepted. That made my order earnings $110.93. I do still do promoted listings. So I have a slightly elevated cost just to get the items to move quicker, but it could be different for you depending on what your fees are. But I thought that was a really fun sale with a really cool print. Okay, next up, I would consider this a Bolo brand as well. This is also one similar to DVF that retails for a ton, but has become more oversaturated over the years. So you really have to know exactly what buyers are looking for. I can tell you that, in my opinion, the most sought after thing that people are looking for in Neely Low Tan are their cashmere sweaters, which is what this is. This one is a black V-neck cashmere sweater, women's size medium. I use keywords to just elevate this again due to the sell-through rate, such as quiet luxury and old money. I listed this for $75 and it sold in 18 days, so pretty quick. And that made my order earnings $55.83. I just like showing these because I think sometimes resellers think like just because something retails high or it's really well known, it doesn't always mean that it's going to translate to a quick sale that makes you lots of money. So just pay attention to it and make sure you guys are always doing your comps, especially when you can with a well-known brand. Like there's lots of information out there. All right, this is not as well known of a brand. I came across this at a thrift store as well. It actually took me a little bit of time to figure out what this exact brand was. So the brand is RGT, which stands for Rogue Territory. And you would think RGT, you think it'd be RT, right? So that's why it took me a second to figure out what this was. But I initially noticed it because they felt like very thick men's military pants. They were very structured and really well made. And so after doing a little bit of digging on this brand, I realized it was Rogue Territory. And the comps on this were pretty good. It really depended on what it was, but I did notice that the trouser type pants were doing good. So my title for this was RGT Rogue Territory Men's Button Fly Military Trousers, size 32, brown and outdoors. I listed this for $65. It unfortunately did have a couple of spots and it sold within just 15 days for an offer to watcher. Again, I automatically send those out through Nifty. I guess I don't, Nifty does. I set it up and it does it for me on each platform. And it sold for $58.40, making my order earnings $44.19. All right, another one of my better sales. This is Eileen Fisher. Here we go with linen again. I want to point out this specific item because later I'm going to show you another Eileen Fisher linen item and I want to just kind of compare the two. So just take a second and kind of look at what this item is. So this is an Eileen Fisher women's 100% linen cardigan. It's in a size medium, which is not the best size. It's open front. It is longer length. And this one I had listed for $40. It was pre-owned. This one sold in just 34 days of being listed, which is really great for that full asking price of around $40, making my order earnings $31.59. So this was a really solid sale. And in general, Eileen Fisher is still one of my favorite brands to find. For me, I just really understand the customer. And so it's really easy to get, flip, and list quickly with the right keywords and hone into that right buyer. One thing I do know is that Eileen Fisher buyers do really focus on material. And so I always make sure to put that in my title itself. So this was linen, so it makes sense that it sold. Later on here, towards the end of the video, I'm going to show you another Eileen Fisher linen piece that did not sell so well for me. And so you can compare the two and I'll obviously talk through it and figure out what the differences are. Okay, next up we have a pair of shoes that I got from the bins. This is the last higher dollar sale I'm going to show you today before we dive into some other noteworthy things. These are called the Kira Driver Moccasin Loafers. This is another, I guess this is the theme of this video, another designer brand, but not great sell-through. Something I still look for in Tory Burch is anything that has like a major logo, especially on like leather shoes. These ones were slightly beat up. They did have quite a bit of wear, but they did have that logo and they did look designer. So pick them up again from the bins. I listed them for $40. They did sit for quite a while, 152 days, but they did eventually sell for my full asking price of $40, making my earnings $29.06. With Tory Burch, again, if you see a logo, that would be an indicator to maybe take a look at the piece. All right, moving on to some other noteworthy things that just didn't make it into either of those first two categories. I had a consignment, someone sent us consignment of quite a bit of soft surroundings maxi dresses lately. A lot of them have been new with tags, which is really great. Some of them are not. And we've been moving a lot of them. And again, Soft Surroundings is a brand that I've given up on a lot of things with. I still like finding their tops in plus sizes. And I like finding their longer length dresses in pretty much any size. So as always, do your comps, but it is one I wanted to point out because their dresses do have a pretty good following. This dress was called the Savor maxi dress. This was a size 1X and it was new with tags. Listed this for $45. It sold in just 33 days on an offer to watcher for close to 38, making order earnings $26.25. All right, this was a really interesting piece. I've never heard of this brand called Almighty, but anytime I see a unique artsy looking tag like this, I'm always looking it up. And also, I wanted to mention this to you. I've said it before, but it's been a while. Anytime you see like an interesting tie-dye, I would be looking that up. If it seems like it's a niche brand known for tie-dye pieces, look it up. There's lots of really niche, expensive ones. Tie-dye itself, in my opinion, not really trending anymore. I don't think that's a print or a pattern that performs well. However, again, if you can find it in those really niche brands, sometimes they can be worth it. I could tell that this one was very, very unique, and this is called the Almighty Heart Tie-Dye. We use keywords hippie festival midi skirt. And we listed this for, I think, around $45 on Poshmark. It sold in just 29 days for an offer of 38, and that made our earnings $30.40. Again, niche tie-dye brands don't always pan out, but definitely worth looking up. Okay, here's another brand that I really love selling still. This brand has held on to its following for a really long time. It's called XCVI. They make very grungy utility slash login look. And right now, this brand can fall into fairy grunge too. So I think it's just a brand that carries into many trending aesthetics and can be placed into a lot of them very strongly, is why I think this brand really holds on to it. But I get excited every time I find it and I always look it up. This one is a ruched midi skirt. I listed this for $35. This one did take a little over 90 days to sell, but it did sell for my full asking price of that $35, making my order earnings $24.18. All right, and I also sold this pair of Nike women's Calm slides. Shoes, super easy to look up the style name, just do a Google lens, and so it's really easy to figure out the demand of stuff. With shoes, not as similar as clothing, but with shoes, like you're likely going to have a lot of competition. It's really about, does someone have the exact thing as you? Most of the time they do, size, color, etc. as far as demand goes. And so they're really easy to look up. One thing I've noticed is any of these athletic wear brands that have these like chunky platform look to them, I'm seeing it everywhere right now. I'm seeing it in UGG. I'm seeing it in Nike. I'm seeing it in Adidas. I'm seeing it in Crocs. So across the board, thick, chunky platforms, if you see them, at least worth looking up and seeing if they are worth anything, which is what made me want to take a look at these. So again, these are called the Calm Slide. They were in a women's larger size as well. Listed them for $35 and they did take over 90 days to sell. They sold on an offer to watcher for $31.50, making my earnings $24.02. All right, and then the last noteworthy before we dive into some of the mistakes that I made is this brand. This is, again, same theme, a luxury brand with a really poor sell-through rate. This is Rag & Bone. They do make some pretty high quality pieces, but very oversaturated. But I've been finding a lot of situations like this where it's a designer brand, but it is fitting into either a major trending aesthetic or a micro trend that I know is popular right now that I can lean things into. And these short sleeve or long sleeve knit polos, whatever you want to call them. They have been performing really well for me. And I usually flip them for around $35, which is what this sold for. So I use keywords to elevate pieces like this, such as old money, knit, polo, and quiet luxury. Also in the description, neutral, minimalist, and capsule. And again, I've sold not designer brands in this style for about the same amount. And yeah, it's going really good with that keyword combination. I think I originally listed this, like I said, for 35 to 40 on Poshmark expecting offers. It took only 45 days to sell and it sold for an offer of $32, making my earnings $25.60. And then finishing with our last category, I have 3 items that were just kind of like regrets, mistakes I've made, things I just wanted to point out so that you can avoid the same mistakes. Here is that Eileen Fisher that I told you we were going to compare to that other Eileen Fisher linen cardigan. So this is a linen item as well. This is also in a larger size, so you would think it would perform better. But this one is in a bright, very bright yellow, which in my opinion is a really hard color. Like yellow's just tough. The only yellows that I'm seeing perform well right now are like soft, buttery yellows. And even those, I think like it's a mini trend, like it's not going to stay. But these bright, stark yellows just not performing well. So disadvantage if you find something in this color. And this one also had a small discoloration on the side. I've talked before about making sure you know your buyer, and Eileen Fisher is a buyer I feel like I know pretty well. When we got this, we didn't realize that there was a spot on it, but Eileen Fisher, that buyer really focuses on like quality, the luxury feel of something. So to have any kind of a flaw specifically for the Eileen Fisher buyer is a huge disadvantage for them. So it makes it really hard to sell a piece with a flaw. Now, if I was selling a Free People item where it looks kind of boho and grungy, you know, they're not really focused on the super high quality, luxurious feel of something. A flaw in that brand weighs a lot less than a flaw in this brand. And so that's why I wanted to bring this up and just show you the differences of how quickly something can sell for how much, containing, you know, similar elements. So this is one, if I'd have known about that flaw, probably would have left behind. The yellow also, I am going to be really, really cautious with. Okay, next up, this is a women's dress that we have had for a while. This one took 144 days to sell, so well beyond my 90-day goal. This is Band of Gypsies, not really a bolo brand, but they do make some cute style-based stuff. This dress had elements of factors that people are searching for right now. However, the overall look of this dress just didn't really heavily lean into one style. I know I've talked about that before. It's a frequent thing on these videos as far as mistakes I made because it is so true, especially when you're style-based sourcing. If it's not heavily leaning into a major trend, like you're just at a disadvantage. So we can see it's corseted, it's got a baby doll, sweetheart look to it. It's in kind of some interesting grungy colors, but overall it's not heavily leaning into a major trend. And so that's why I think this one didn't sell. This one, again, 144 days to sell. I ended up accepting an offer of just $12 on it just to see it move. And my earnings were only $9.52 on this piece, which sold on Depop. All right, and then the last one, this is just a brand I wanted to show you. I used to pick up a ton of this brand. It is Fresh Produce. Something about this brand is they were kind of known for being like a sustainable, more natural materials, just kind of like an effortless beachy look. This brand has like tanked. So even though it might, again, contain elements that people are looking for, you really want to look at your competition. There's probably hundreds of this exact Fresh Produce capri pant. And so you want to make sure you're just being realistic about what you're sourcing, how you're listing it. Is it really worth trying to convince your buyer? In this case, definitely not. I don't know. Somebody sourced these for us. It wasn't me. But I do think that they were going for more of like a style factor based. But I wanted to bring this up just because, again, previous years I have talked about the brand Fresh Produce being great, and it's definitely not anymore in most things. So this one, we have dropped the price and we're accepting best offer. This took 209 days to sell. I eventually accepted an offer for $18, making my order earnings $13.35. All right, guys, so that's it for what sold last week. Hope that you all enjoyed watching. Let me know how sales are going for you. Have you started experiencing summer slowdown yet? And if so, what are you doing about it? What are you doing to combat the upcoming slow sales? Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.